everybody. Thank you so much for joining. I'm super excited to be talking to you today, and a huge thank you from me to Family Law Week for organising and inviting you all on, and a huge thank you to you too for giving up some of your time today. I want to pack it for as much value for you as I possibly can. So please do interact on the chat. It would be great if you could pop in why you're here, what you're hoping to get out of this today, or if you've got any specific questions as well, then I really want to make sure I answer everything for you today. So you've got me for an hour. So do hit me up on questions, or feel free to challenge me on some of my views. I'm open to that. I just want to raise awareness with this training. So I have a PowerPoint that I'm going to go through, and obviously you'll get the recording as well. So, but do pop in the chat while you're here if there's anything particular you're looking forward to, or just say hi, tell me who you are, where you're from. I'd love to see those questions, those comments coming through. I am going to share my slides and get started. So, hi Chris, nice to meet you. Right, okay. So today I'm going to be talking to you about when high conflict isn't conflict at all. And this is really a trauma aware training on domestic abuse and family law. Now, I've only got an hour. This isn't enough for you to go away and work with clients with a trauma informed lens, but I'm going to do my best to raise awareness in the time that we have together to kind of cover as much as I possibly can on the surface level, hopefully to help you by adding massive value, and to maybe get some questions going and to give you some different perspectives on certain things. So why does this conversation matter? Well, I'm going to introduce myself in a second for those of you that don't know me, but I just want to reassure you that you're in the right place today. This conversation is very, very important. If you turn the television on, or you watch Netflix, or in the world today on social media, you'll see domestic abuse is up there as a really big issue. We're seeing more and more of it. Awareness is definitely heightened in society. And I think there's a massive overlap with what you see as family law professionals. So obviously, you will see relationship breakdown. You'll see what's termed as high conflict divorce. You will be dealing with emotional clients. Some are better at hiding their emotions, or stuffing, as I call them, their emotions. Obviously, you're going to be dealing with escalating disputes and very difficult negotiations. The reason why this is such an important topic, and why this conversation really matters, is because sometimes the underlying dynamics are misinterpreted. It's things that you'll see every day, but actually the psychological dynamics that sit below high conflict separation, I think it's really important to see it from a perspective that I have in my work with domestic abuse. So I'm Sara Davison. I'm best known as the divorced coach. I know it's a really sexy, catchy job title. It's definitely not what I dreamed of at school. It wasn't on the graduate careers list either, but it's something that I feel like is my passion and my purpose. Hopefully you'll see from the training today that I am very passionate about helping people to cope better with any kind of breakup, divorce, and especially my specialist topic is how to recover from toxic relationships. Toxic meaning domestic abuse, narcissistic abuse, and we're going to cover a lot of that with today's training. I have been a coach for 30 years, and my work hasn't always been in divorce. My work in divorce started 17 years ago when I was catapulted out of my own marriage. Didn't see it coming, hit me like a freight train. But having tried therapy and different things to cope with what I was dealing with, I realized that there wasn't specific help for navigating the breakup and divorce arena, especially from a toxic ex. So I created the tools. My first book actually was my lawyer who recommended I write my book, Fiona Shackleton. She said, Sarah, you should really write a book about this because your tools and how you're coping, I've never seen these before. So I combined my self-help background and my 15 years previous coaching experience with my divorce experience and created the tools that I now share with millions of people around the world today. So that's my specialist area. I've worked with thousands of clients around the world, but today I really focus in my private clinic with the ultra high net worth clients. That's my private practice. But I've also set up a training school called the International Divorce Coach Centre of Excellence. And we've trained over 800 coaches in 30 different countries now to take the tools that I created and get out in the world and help other people out there who really need them to cope better. So I'm really proud of that. It's something that's making a big positive difference in the world. I know the tools work because I tried them on myself. I was my first guinea pig when I was going through my own breakup and realized that the self-help tools from the personal development world I've been in for so long could really make a massive difference. The thing I didn't know was that I had been in an abusive relationship, and that only became clear as I came out. And I will talk a little bit about that going forward. I'm also proud to be the patron of a domestic abuse charity called the Dash Charity, which is based in my local area, covers Windsor, Slough, Maidenhead, and Ascot. And I do trainings like this with all sorts of organisations, family law firms, other law firms, advertising agencies, HR leaders, a lot of work with them to help support their employees, and also organisations like the British government as well. I train them on how to support their employees dealing with domestic abuse. So I have a lot of experience, 5 times best-selling author. I have a podcast called Heartbreak to Happiness, where I've interviewed hundreds of people on there and it's really inspiring actually. If you have clients that are struggling, there's a lot of pain to power stories which will help them on their journey too. So that's a bit about me and why I'm here today. But the key idea that I wanted to discuss today and why you're here is looking at the fact that not all high conflict divorce is actually conflict. Often it's trauma, power imbalance, coercive control, and post separation abuse. Now, power imbalance and trauma, coercive control, these are things that are happening for my clients and for my coaches' clients. And we spend a lot of our time working on the other side, picking our clients up off the floor who are struggling to deal with it. Sometimes before they come to you, we do a lot of referrals to family lawyers. Some of you will know me, some of you know that. We refer lots of clients to large numbers of family lawyers around the world. But one of the most important things here, and one of the things I think is really misunderstood, is post-separation abuse. Did you know that abuse often, and in most cases, gets worse after separation? Most people don't know that. Most people think that when you separate from an abuser, everything gets better and you move forward. This is just not factually correct because, and this is something that I'm in partnership with Family Law Week, I've created a training which will go deeper into this. So this is really surface level. But I'll happy to take any questions if you want me to go into more detail later on. But cycles of abuse show that as you pull away from the abuser, their need for control increases. Your risk escalates. Now, this is really shocking, and I don't say it to frighten you, but it's a fact that 30% of domestic homicides in the UK happen within 3 months of separation. 30% of domestic homicides happen within 3 months of separation. So when clients come to you in those early days and come to us as coaches, this is when their risk has massively escalated. But I think the most chilling fact around that statistic is that 80% of those murders, there has never been any physical violence before. 80%. Domestic abuse is, I'm going to talk a lot about this, but domestic abuse is a term that we use in the UK. In America, they still call it domestic violence. We changed that a while back here in the UK because it is misleading about what domestic abuse is. People think it's and didn't report or didn't think they were victims because they weren't having bruises or physical violence, burns, broken bones, black eyes. But violence is not usually the first thing that happens. Usually it's a coercive control, it's that power imbalance that happens. And we'll talk about how you get into those relationships. But violence often comes later down the line. It's not the first point of call with domestic abuse. So, high conflict divorce, not is not all high conflict divorce is conflict. Often it is these things which are very hard to spot. It's very hard to spot the signs of domestic abuse. My training that I've done in partnership with Family Law Week will help you to do that. If you haven't been through it, it's very hard to spot it. If you have been through it, it's also very hard to spot it. And I can tell you that most of your clients won't even know they're in toxic relationships, which again makes it harder because they won't necessarily say, I'm in an abusive relationship. Many of them won't know. Many of them will be minimalizing it or normalizing it to stay in those relationships. And that's what they've had to manage to survive. It's a survival technique. And as a survivor myself, I know that I didn't realize just how bad it was until I came out. Okay, so obviously, you know this. Breakup is not just a legal event, it's a psychological event, and it has a massive impact on everything. And these things aren't small things. Your identity. We always say my other half, right? No, my other half. You suddenly lost your other half. So you, and a lot of clients will feel like they're less than, they're half a person. They don't know how to function. Their security, their dream of the future, gone. Finances, often, as you know, better than most, decimated. And also, obviously, the legal process through the court system could put more pressure on them for that. Parenting, you know how we all feel when our kids, for those of you that are parents, when our kids are upset, it's devastating. Like we often feel their pain for them as well as them alongside them, and it impacts us massively. But one of the challenges with a breakup and divorce is we're managing that plus the guilt, plus the fear, plus trying to hold ourselves together whilst our children are going through this. So these things are massive on their own. Obviously, living arrangements thrown up in the air. Very often, house move is on the cards, selling your house. We know that is one of the most stressful experiences that anyone can go through, moving house. It's up there with divorce and death of a loved one. So again, these aren't small things on this. They look small on bullet points, but they're huge for individuals to manage. And that lack of certainty for the future creates fear, but it also creates people feeling stuck because you cannot move towards something you cannot see. If you can't imagine what the future looks like, if you haven't got a vision, because you don't know how much money you have, if you don't know where you'll be living, if you don't know how often you're going to be able to put your kids to bed, it's very hard to move forward. And also, if you're in, then on top of that, a toxic relationship, maybe one of my clients at the moment, a male client, is having to live in the same house as his ex at the moment for various reasons. And they have 4 kids. And the living in that environment again puts a lot of pressure if you're living with someone who's abusive, and it is very difficult and sometimes dangerous. So let's talk about iceberg effect. What I mean by this is very often clients will present the tip of the iceberg, and that's what us as professionals will see, the first impression. Very often, especially survivors of abuse, people that are living with it, we can present very much as calm, together. We can have a structured conversation. We can manage the paperwork and have rational discussions. Others can't. There's a whole spectrum, and everyone deals differently with these things. But very often, there's lots of reasons why someone struggling with domestic abuse won't reveal it. Could be fear of the abuser, could be they haven't acknowledged it themselves, it could be fear of repercussions. There's so many reasons, right? Or just not knowing how to articulate it, shame. So again, so many reasons. But what often and will be sitting beneath the surface are things like anxiety. They're not sleeping. Obviously, that has a huge impact on the rest of their life. The stress from the legal system, because we don't understand it. Lay people coming in, it can be very intimidating. It can be frightening, especially for victims of abuse. Anything like that is more of a trauma response, which we're going to talk about, than actually it being particularly stressful for any reason, but it's a trauma response. Fear about the finances, parenting pressure, and obviously if there's hostile communication going on, this is all going on under the surface. And some of it you'll see over time, but some of it you may not see. And again, the ripple effect will impact all areas of life. And there's a lot of research recently, which is really interesting, showing and linking victims of domestic abuse and physical health impact. And actually, there's a lot of research coming out showing that many victims of abuse will go on to develop very serious diseases or even terminal illnesses. So, as we've talked about, a huge ripple effect and on their support system. A support system is something you really need when you're dealing with this, but very often it disintegrates, and the people you expect to show up don't. And the people maybe sometimes who you don't expect to show up do. So there can be good sides to it too. Okay, so what is going on for clients from an emotional point of view? I want to go through this because I think it's really important to understand clarity gives you power. And when you're going through a breakup, everything's up in the air. Everything's up in the air. So we're not functioning properly. We're overwhelmed. There's a lot going on. Now you'll see that, but actually there are 5 stages that clients go through during a breakup. It's called the loss cycle. It's developed by a lady called Elizabeth Kubler-Ross back in the 60s. And it was the grief cycle, and it was developed for people going through bereavement. But what we know is that divorce is the second most traumatic experience we go through after death of a loved one. And so it follows psychologically that clients are going through the same stages. So you can see from the loss cycle that we've got mood on one axis and time on the other. The first stage is denial, and that can be a stage which a lot of people find it hard to understand, but I know you won't, as someone that sees it all the time. Denial is when clients are just not facing up to it. They're putting their head in the sand. They're like, this isn't happening. For me, I found I'd been in our excuse me, I had an office with my ex. We had a global business. We had an office in London, an office in Sydney, and I've been out in the Australia office, flown back to my apartment, and with my son, who was only 1 at the time. And I thought, right, I'm going to go to the gym to get over this jet lag, which is pretty severe on the way back from Australia. So I went to my bedside table to get out my hairband and a few bits for the gym. And as I opened the drawer, I saw a contact lens box. And in that contact lens box, there was an eyelash, a false eyelash in there. And my side of the bed, so I explained, you sort of had to shimmy down to between the curtain and the bed. So it wasn't like a thoroughfare for the apartment. It was kind of, you had to be sleeping in the bed to have left that there. So in that moment, I realized my whole world had changed. I knew that deep down, but I didn't tell anyone about it for about 8 weeks. I didn't speak to my mum. I definitely didn't speak to my husband. I didn't even tell my best friends. I couldn't even face it because my body was in shock. And for a lot of clients, they'll go through finding receipts or suspicions or seeing a WhatsApp or a text message, an email. You'll have seen all this in your work, but they won't have confronted it because their body isn't ready yet. This is a trauma response where they shut down and wait until they're ready to process it a little bit stronger. Then, as you can see, the curve moves up in energy to anger. And anger can be rage. And you'll have seen clients in rage, full out rage. And then it can be more frustration or stress. Some clients don't really do anger, like angry behavior. They might demonstrate it in more stress or anxiety. But everyone deals differently with these different emotions. But it will be very much frustration and upset. And why is this happening to me? Then we come down to bargaining. Now, this is a really interesting phase where you might find your clients are compromising their values to sort of make a relationship work that really isn't tolerable. But because human beings, we don't like change. We don't want to move forward into unknown. We'd rather stay in a relationship that we know 100% certainty is bad. We were feeling rejected, but at least we know we've got 100% certainty. Outside of the relationship, we don't know what that looks like. So this is kind of the bargaining stage. Should I stay? Should I go? And then we sink into depression, which is the 4th stage. Now, yes, that's a tough stage to be in, but this is quite often where your clients will go to a GP and get a diagnosis of being depressed. And one of the challenges we have with that is, remember we talked about identity before. Identity then becomes your banner, who you think you are. This is a lifetime sentence almost. Oh, I'm depressed. Well, yes, you're depressed, and that makes sense because it's a normal part of the grieving cycle. But the good news is you can get through that and come out the other side. So it's not forever. And I think this is slightly where clients need a bit of a that sort of help and support to power through to acceptance, and just understanding and getting the clarity that that is the next stage can actually help clients move through, which is why this tool is really important. And that clarity gives them power, because at acceptance, they know it's over. They're kind of, I don't want to go back, or I know I can't go back. So I'm kind of accepting of that. But also, this is where we see a lot of clients get stuck, because remember, you can't move towards something you cannot see. So if they don't have that vision, we find clients stay very stuck here, and that's where things can get difficult. And very often they move up and down the curve because these stages aren't linear. You don't go from 1 to 5, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You might even get to 5 and slip back to 2 or 4. So again, without the proper help and support to push through, and without moving forward in a constructive way, this can sometimes be a bit of a slippery slope backwards and forwards. But I hope you can see the power of this and the psychological cycles that your clients are dealing with. So when we add in trauma responses to this, what happens is clients are, when they're in a trauma response, so it's basically when someone feels unsafe in their relationship or in a situation, what happens is our nervous system will shift into survival mode. Okay, so everyday responses and calm reflection and logical thinking, rational thinking is out the window. Common trauma responses are fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. Okay, so let's break that down. So this is how you might see this in a client. So a fight, obviously argumentative, they might be difficult communication. You might find that they're very stubborn. We find a lot of clients are very resentful, and everybody reacts in different ways, right? But fight is one we definitely see. Flight is avoiding meetings, avoiding discussions, avoiding those conversations, avoiding completing paperwork even as well, just completely just trying to disassociate, which is a trauma response from not having to face it. So again, very, very common. And it's not like your clients will have one or go just one of these. They'll oscillate depending on what's going on and where they are in the process. Freeze. Now, freeze is confusion or just seemingly in like an inability to process information. But this is not about capability, right? It's not that they're not able to, they're not intelligent enough or educated enough, or it's not capability, it's capacity. When your nervous system is in this situation, you're in survival mode, which means that you're just not able to function in the way you could before. And so this is why you'll see, people that are high performers in other areas of their life, or very capable people in other areas of their life, appearing to be very incapable, difficult, a bit stupid at times, making silly mistakes. Now, this isn't their capability. This is their capacity being massively reduced because of trauma. And then the fawn response is where over agreeing, excessive apologizing. See this a lot with clients who are walking on eggshells, trained to walk on eggshells at home. They've lost the ability to trust their own instinct. That is what domestic abuse does. If you're in a coercively controlling relationship for any period of time, it will reduce your confidence and your self-esteem, your ability to trust your own decisions. Why? Because you'll have been told time and time again, you're an idiot, you've got that wrong, you're a bit silly, you're a bit daft, or worse, right? So over time, they'll get used to apologizing. It's the best response they've learned over time. Just don't cause a fuss, just apologize. Agree if you can, because that makes it easier. Plus, we learn to give away our own agency. That's why some clients will be very dependent on you to make decisions for them. They'll say things like, well, you know better. What do you think I should do? Well, you tell me what to do in this situation. It'll be very hard for them to make those conscious decisions. It'll be very hard for them to actually go, right, I'll make my own decision. And it's not, again, because of intelligence or ability. It's just driven by fear and driven by trauma. And a trauma response will be, I don't know, you help me. this is what we see a lot with clients. This is probably fawning is probably one of the biggest things, but we see all of these things over time and in the same clients. So one client can demonstrate all of these in a very short space of time too. So what is domestic abuse? I think people, obviously one-off incident is not it. It's not a single incident. It's consistent and persistent behaviors, pattern of behavior over a period of time. Okay. So again, it covers so many things. Coercive control, obviously, you guys know all about that. Emotional abuse, financial abuse, and again, you don't get one in isolation. If someone is hiding things or not sharing things, that is financial abuse, but also that is part of emotional abuse, which is part of the coercive controlling behavior and intimidation tactics, as well as the psychological abuse. So it's all wrapped up together. You won't get emotional abuse in isolation from financial abuse, or it won't just be they're financially controlling, but the rest is fine. Just like they're not just abusive to one person. If they're abusive to their partner, they are abusive. They are an abusive personality. The thing is, and this is something that, again, a lot of people don't realize, abuse is not always nasty. Abuse is not always nasty. What I mean by that is sometimes everyone is a pawn on their chessboard, right? And so they're looking to see how can I get the best out of this person and I get what I want. So for some of those people, they'll spin the plate of being the most charismatic, the most generous, the kindest, the most thoughtful person. And so that person will think, oh, they're great, which actually, again, is intimidating for the victim because they're thinking, well, everybody else thinks they're good, or this person thinks they're great. Maybe it's just me. But again, it's not, okay? Which also means that they cannot be abusive to a parent and not the children. If they're abusive to a parent, they are abusive to the children. There's no delineation. It's just if they're abusive, they are abusive to everyone in their life, but it's not always nasty, which can be an interesting way of thinking about it, but it's how it works. Stalking and strangulation are actually two of the highest risk factor indicators. So if you have a client who has been strangled or has a stalker, their ex is stalking them, these are very high risk. It's indicators for that is putting them at the top of the risk assessment scale. So again, please be aware of that. Harassment, again, there's an administrative harassment, administrative abuse, and obviously we see a lot of that through the family court system with paperwork and things like that. If an abuser is not handing things in on time or doing things that are difficult to confuse the process. And obviously it covers physical violence, but physical violence is just often the last point of call. That is the last thing that we see. And obviously obviously that's horrific, but all the other things, emotional scars, can be just as difficult to deal with, and people can't see them. So again, it is a reality of psychological and controlling behavior over a long period of time. So abuse versus difficult behavior. And obviously there are difficult partners out there who can be argumentative, be stubborn, really be tough on the negotiations. And, a lot of people say, how do I know if this is a healthy or an unhealthy sort of divorce? Now, healthy is where there's still conflict. If you're in a healthy relationship, you're still going to have arguments with your partner. You're still going to fall out. You're still going to have those disagreements as well. And I think that's really important to note that you will have those disagreements and it will be difficult sometimes for you to come to agreements when you're talking about separating your lives, your finances. You're going to see the worst in lots of people, and that's just normal, right? And I think having the conversations up front when we're working with our clients about setting the tone now and agreeing that yes, it's going to get difficult, and if they are amicable enough to have those conversations to say, look, we're going to go through this process, but when it gets tough, this is how we're going to cope because we want to preserve this relationship moving forward. But we know we're going to see the worst of both of us in this process. That's a good way to go because you are going to see those things. And that's not abusive. Most people in a healthy dynamic relationship, if it is difficult, there are arguments, You'll know it's healthy because ultimately both parties are understanding of the fact that they're working towards a fair resolution and some form of compromise. They know that they're going to have to give something up on both sides, right? To come away with something that works for both. The word compromise does not exist with an abusive partner, and they're going to be trying lots of different tactics throughout the process. What happens when you stop being with that partner? You're separated from that partner, even if it's their choice to go, even if they choose to leave. Post separation abuse can be huge. We talked about the risk escalating. What's happening for them is they're losing their control over the victim. So everything that they used to do when they were living with them, when they're in the same house, the things that they were doing now has to be channeled through the finances and the children and usually the lawyer that they're working with. So controlling communication can be a key tactic. So they might not provide information. You've seen this, all the tactics that abusers will use, or they're sending things through in a confused way. They're not sending it through on time. Manipulating the legal process. There's so many ways, and you're more expert in that than me, of how they can manipulate that process. One of the most difficult things for victims of abuse will be when they use their children as leverage. Money is obviously important, and cutting off access to funds, lying about assets and money, and spending money before they can get access to it. That happens. But using the children as leverage is what disables and paralyzes a lot of people that we work with. And that can be, obviously extremely painful. It's like having an intimate terrorist in your head. It affects everything. It makes you feel sick. It makes you terrified. And this using children as leverage is something that obviously we see a lot. Something that I campaign about a lot at Parliament, something I'm very passionate about, because I spend a lot of my time, and so do my coaches, really supporting people through those processes, because a lot of victims of abuse are suicidal when these kind of challenges come up, understandably, right? Understandably. So this is a big topic and something I'm happy to take questions on if anyone wants to ask me about that. But the alienating behaviors, or whatever you want to call it, is a big challenge that we spend a lot of time in especially my private clinic, supporting people through. Threatening reputational harm. If you've got clients that are working, obviously that can be a massive challenge for them. If you have clients that are in the public eye, as I know many of you do, and so do I, this is one of the biggest fears they have. Photos, social media, videos, especially, all these things threatening. Again, this is abusive behavior. And this is continued harassment after separation. As I touched on before, this is something that really happens a lot, and it will escalate. So post-separation abuse is probably the biggest misunderstood issue in the family court system, because people just really don't understand the depth of the trauma that is being caused by the separation abuse that is happening. Now, why do clients not recognize that they're in an abusive relationship? So this is something we see a lot, and our clients are asked a lot. And we ask ourselves, like, how did I get into this relationship, right? But they don't start as obviously abusive, even though they are. Because obviously we wouldn't get into them if the abuser was acting as they do on the last day, on day one. Because the early stages will often involve what's known as love bombing. So really intense romance, grandiose gestures, rapid commitment. I love you on week 2. Let's fly to St. Lucia on week 3. I'll never leave you. All your fears that you had as going into the relationship, if they're vulnerable, if they've got elderly parents, or they're having challenges at work or money issues, the reassurances that they don't have to worry about that anymore because they're going to be looked after, these grand gestures, this love bombing. So this is why we get in, and we then fall in love at that point, at the initial point, with their perception of reality that the abuser creates. So they're very good at creating the perfect ideal partner for their victim. So they will interview, and that will come across as being very attentive, a lot of question answer asking. I get a lot of clients coming from who are dating again, and they'll be saying, "Oh, Sarah, it's amazing. Went on this first date, and it was almost like they asked me all these questions about me. What am I looking for? What are my values? What do I care about? What am I worried about?" Now, that can be a really healthy, emotionally intelligent date, right? Who's asking questions because they genuinely care. Can also be a massive red flag because once somebody has that information, they can morph into who they know they need to become for this victim to fall in love with. So I'm not saying it is a red flag and a definite sign of abuse. I'm saying it's a potential red flag. Okay. So they then create this perception of reality of who they are, having interviewed and found out what they need to become, because it's going to be different for everyone. And then the victim will fall in love with this perfect perception. The Disney hero or heroine has shown up, and this is the person they fall in love with. And that's why they're very intensely bonded from day one. It's very intense. It burns very bright. And so the victims often fall in love very fast as well. And if you try and suggest that maybe it is a red flag or it may be going too fast, their rose-tinted glasses are usually taped on their head, and it's impossible for anyone, friend, family, well-meaning person to suggest that may not be healthy, right? So that's why we fall in love with the abusers at the beginning very fast. And we have this unrealistic expectation of who they are, which is not based on reality. Then the mask slips over time, and that might be once a week, that might not show up for 3 months, but then when it starts to show up, it intensifies gradually over a period of time. So what does that mean for the victim? It means it's very hard to leave. It means you're already in. You might be, well, you will be in love, but maybe you've got financial commitments or you're living together. Often living together is very early on because it increases control. Becoming financially dependent, again, is another abuse tactic. So that also comes in. Reducing confidence and self-esteem slowly over time means you become more dependent on them. Obviously, if you're married and have kids, then again, that's another level. It's very complex to leave an abusive relationship. The financial dependence, again, very often you might have your own, a lot of us work with very successful professionals, but I've worked with very successful professionals whose salary goes into their partner's bank account because they look after the money. Now, this could start off as a very caring gesture. Like, I'm better at it. Don't worry, I'm good at that. And you're better at other things. Like, you look after the kids and I'm going to do this. Sounds like a good co-partnering, co-parenting agreement, right? Actually, over time, it turns out that you have no access to funds. And you really don't know what's going on. The trauma bonding, because of the cycle of abuse, of it being really good one moment, then being horrific, and then you step away and then they hoover, is the term, hoover you back in by either apologizing, by other grandiose gestures, by other telling you, what are you talking about? That didn't happen that way. The gaslighting, the confusing behavior. I think you're going a bit crazy. Like, what's going on for you there? And again, then looping back in to then actually everything's fine. And victims are so happy that it's got back on an even keel because the incident of abuse was so destabilizing, frightening, and unsettling, not just for them, but for friends, family, kids, if they're there, that as soon as it gets back onto an even keel and the abuser's kind of got you back, you don't want to talk about it. You don't want to go, hey, what just happened was really out of order. Because one, there's fear you're going to start the cycle again. And two, there's the relief that, oh my God, I'm back. And you live in the hope because you believe they can get back to that ideal partner, that they'll show you that. So just a glimmer of that will enable that victim to stay feeling more reassured and hoping, okay, like we're back to normal now. I don't want to say anything. Let's carry on. Hopefully that won't happen again. But the cycle of abuse repeats. It's very difficult to see when you're in it, though. So that fear of escalating the argument or making things worse. So if you suggest to somebody that you're leaving an abuser, your risk will escalate. Obviously, they won't want you to leave in a lot of cases. So therefore, your risk is going through the roof. A lot of victims will be scared for the consequences for kids. Now, I was invited back last night to speak at my old university, Southampton University, in the business school where I studied, gosh, 3 decades ago. Felt very old going back there, but it was great to speak to them. But I was talking about these topics, and a lot of the older, more mature students who were there doing the MBA courses and things, there was one lady in particular who came up to me and said, I don't leave because of my kids. Like, how can I leave? I just can't break up the family. But actually, again, as you know, what is the lessons that is teaching our children? So there's often that, I don't want to hurt the children. I don't want to reduce their lifestyle. I don't want to, divorce and them to have to live with a broken home. And I hate that term because quite often it's the better option, as you will know. So that concern for kids keeps people there. And the shame and embarrassment of dealing with it. There's still a lot of stigma, maybe not so much in this country around divorce now. It's more accepted. And some celebrities make it look really trendy and do it 2 or 3 or 4 times. However, there is the shame and embarrassment as well around it for some people, and depending on your community and culture. But also, the domestic abuse side is humiliating. There's a huge amount of shame still related to that. And I still get comments on my social media all the time and DMs from people saying, aren't you embarrassed that you were in a toxic relationship? And I'm like, well, yeah, it is humiliating because I would say I'm a pretty intelligent, not super academic, but, relatively educated person. And how did I let myself get into a situation which was so diabolical? Yes, it's embarrassing. Yes, it is. However, if what I do helps one person realize that they're not alone, then that's okay for me. And actually, the shame should be with them. And that's why this whole movement with Giselle Pellico has been so liberating for a lot of victims and survivors, because it's about owning the fact that it's just not our shame to carry. So again, this is a deep issue. Could go on about it for a while, but obviously we don't have enough time for me to go into too much detail. So separation increases the risk, as I've talked about. These are things to look out for if you are working with clients. Obviously, legal intimidation, not obviously from you, but using your legal team to intimidate is something a very powerful and highly effective tactic by an abuser, which will generate huge amounts of fear, trauma, and devastation, emotional deregulation, and sometimes suicidal thoughts from victims. I'm not exaggerating that to scare you, but this is, and I'm sure you see it, right, with your clients, but this is where my team do a lot of really good work supporting people through that to understand the game. And a lot of our coaching, which is fast, positive transformational coaching, is about educating them on what abuse is and understanding this is just tactics. It is a tactical game they are playing. And when you see it as tactics, and I have a gameplay checklist for abusers that I teach my clients, and I share that in the training that I've created for you guys too, it's very much that they will then see, I'm in a game. This is like, if I can understand the tactics, it de-escalates the emotional intensity of it. But I think that's one of the scariest things that is reported from clients is the letters from lawyers will trigger huge trauma responses. And it's not that they don't like you as their team. It's like, what have I been sent now? And that can be absolutely terrifying. And the impact will be much deeper than what you can see on the letter. And I know a lot of you will de-escalate and maybe not pass the letter on, which is fantastic. But actually what is going on for that client is so much deeper than that, because they just that connection with their ex, just their connection and the reminder will trigger a whole trauma response, which isn't anything necessarily that's said in the letter. It's the patterns that we're trained in, the way we're trained to respond, that runs so much deeper, that unpicks the scab that might have started to heal, that causes the trauma, that causes those responses and sends them into a spiral. So sometimes it may not seem like it might seem like an exaggerated response, but that's because it's a trauma response, not responding to actually what's factually in the letter. So all these things that we've talked about here will trigger that trauma. Harassment, stalking is incredibly dangerous, so please report that if get them to contact their domestic abuse charity. If you're worried about safeguarding and signposting, my training that I've created, I'm going to talk about in a moment, will cover that for you as well, so you'll know what to do. I think that's important, that you guys have the confidence to know exactly what's needed and what is appropriate, because actually, interestingly, phoning the police or the emergency services for your clients is absolutely not, in most cases, the right thing to do. Okay, why awareness matters. Obviously, family law professionals, often the first people that our clients are speaking to, or they'll definitely be sharing with you this information during the process. And awareness obviously helps you to interpret the behavior accurately. So what might seem like a difficult or a client being very resisting something, or they're stuck. Why aren't they moving forward? They need to sign that document. They need to pull themselves together for court. All these things, yes, absolutely, but maybe they don't have the tools or the understanding or the clarity to actually be able to do that. And some of this can be pretty quickly fixed. Like the tools that I created were to get me into court. I've had many court appearances. I understand the trauma involved in that, and I've created so many tools. I mean, this book, Screw You, Watch This: How to Recover from Toxic Relationships, came out in November, bestseller in 3 categories on Amazon, including domestic abuse, which is something I'm really proud of. And it also is #1 best newcomer on Amazon as well in November. But that has all my tools and techniques. So if your client can't afford one-to-one coaching, or actually have free support, they can come on. We have free weekly Zoom meetings run by my accredited coaches. So if someone wants free help and maybe they're on legal aid or they can't afford one-to-one, which is more tailored, they can get free support. I created it, I deliver it, my company pays for it every week. And just go onto my website, saradavison.com, and register. They'll get the support and find their tribe. But again, helping you to interpret that behavior accurately is key. How to communicate more effectively. I talk a lot about trauma-informed language, and you'll notice I don't use the word domestic abuse as often as I do toxic or unhealthy relationships. And this is all like helping reduce the triggers and the impact on clients that are struggling with this. And I go deep into that. There's scripts and there's sentences and phrases you can use. The workbook that I've created for it, I'm going to show you in a minute, is massive for it. And then obviously it covers safeguarding concerns that will help you with that, and to signpost, which I think just takes a bit of pressure off you. So just to tell you a little bit about the training, and thank you so much for being here today. I've done it in partnership with Family Law Week. They've been incredibly supportive, and I'm really grateful to them for appreciating the need for this training, because that's why I've created it. I think this doesn't exist out in the world at the moment. And since I launched it, I've just been so touched by the messages. So thank you to anyone here who's done it already and is part of the group that are doing it and have got their accreditation, because the feedback I've got is really lovely and I really appreciate it. But I'm glad it's adding value and I'm glad it's helping. And what I've noticed is a few people have bought it for members of their team, and then they've rolled it out to more and more because they see the value. It's only £150. I'm doing it to get it out there. So it is created especially for family lawyers. I train HR and different professionals in finance, but this is particularly for family law. And it includes everything and more, really deep dive into abuse. It recognizes trauma language, which I think is important. It trains you much deeper on abuse patterns. Obviously, this is just top of the level of what you need. Safeguarding awareness, and hopefully boosting your professional confidence when you're dealing with this, so you can spot the signs and competently and confidently deal with what's coming up. It comes with a workbook, which has, again, at the back, an appendix with lots of tools as well that you can just take out and have as referrals to help you spot signs. I've created a domestic abuse identification toolkit for you as well. That's in there. And it's great for people that are very experienced. You'll know some of this, obviously, but it will just give you a bit more of a grounding and like compartmentalize some of the tools for you. But for people that are coming in, like paralegals or juniors who are new to this as well, essential. But I've got some amazing feedback this morning from some barristers and a family judge, which I'm so delighted with, who've done the training. So it's only 4 hours. You can do it on the train on the way to work. It's self-paced. It's all online. It's all downloadable. You don't need to talk to anyone. You can just stick your headphones in, watch the videos, and go through the workbook. And then at the end, there's a quiz. And that quiz, once you pass, which I know all of you will fly through with your legal training, you're quite capable of passing a quiz. And then you will get your CPD accreditation certificate and also the logo that you can put on your emails or your socials, whatever you want to do with that, just to let clients know that you have that. A lot of my followers, and I have quite a few across my social media as an influencer and the world's leading expert in this field, will be looking for that kind of accreditation because that's something that's really important for me and my coaches as well, to make sure that we're recommending and referring to people that have that depth of understanding so our clients are best supported. So if you want to take part, there is a QR code. You can scan the QR code and get access to more information about the training and just have a look in more detail. Obviously, please feel free to reach out to me and contact me if you do have any questions on the training. Really happy to speak to anybody. I also do lunch and learn webinars. I do in-person trainings. I have a podcast where you can come on and feature what you're doing if you specialize in this as well, and come and talk to my audience about it, and be a guest as a feature episode on my top charting podcast, Heartbreak to Happiness. And also, if you want content for your coach, for your clients, then I also do content packages where I can build that into giving your clients support as they go through. But this training, it's only £150 per person to do it. If you go through the link, you can buy multiple passes for different people on your team on the link. And I just want to say a massive thank you, because when awareness of domestic abuse increases, then misinterpretation decreases. And this training really does help clients. And it's not just helping them, it actually does save lives. I can't tell you the number of messages we've had from clients saying, Sara, without these tools, I wouldn't be here. And this is all part of my mission to help people cope better with these really difficult situations. And I just thank you so much for being here and listening and taking part. And I really hope it adds value to your toolkit, which I know is already extensive. And I hope you can find time to fit 4 hours into your busy schedule to do the training. Right, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to come and answer some questions. If you do have questions, please pop them in the chat. Let me see. Okay, hello. Some people just popped in say, hello, Nicholas, soul practitioner. If you do have questions, pop them in. Chris is going to do the training. Thank you. I believe violence makes up just 12% of domestic abuse, Helen. Yeah, it's surprisingly low. I think a lot of people think that domestic violence is everything. But it's actually surprisingly low. And there's some really shocking statistics around the alienating behaviours statistics as well. This is something I'm super passionate about, but the statistics on that, don't quote me 100%. There's been I haven't seen the latest ones, but in most cases where domestic abuse is alleged, in those cases when a victim will say the reason the child doesn't want to go is because of domestic abuse, or they were abusive to me, so I think maybe that's why my child won't go. The counter allegation is very often domestic is parental alienation or alienating behaviours now. And in 95% of those cases, that trumps the domestic abuse claim. It's really difficult to see. Obviously, you guys will be up to date with the presumption of contact campaign that's going on and going through at the moment. Hopefully, but there's lots of things around this that are interesting, and there's two sides to everything. Abuse happens to men and women. I have a lot of male clients, especially in my ultra high net worth, interestingly, clinic. But we have a lot of women dealing with this because it is predominantly a gender-based issue. Do you also help cohabitants? Yes. So my work is breakup and divorce. Obviously, you know, the divorce rate is, I think it globally as a stat, 56%, which is huge. But a lot of people are cohabiting now because people they don't have money for a wedding. They don't have money for, you know, getting divorced either. So a lot of people are choosing to cohabit. So my work is any kind of relationship breakdown. obviously including divorce because that's something different. But I don't do any legal, any financial. I'm hoping you can see I very much stay in my lane. And I've trained over 800 coaches, and my message to them always is, guys, we don't give legal advice. You might have been through a case, you might have your own opinions on things, but we will help clients to get a letter, get some questions together to ask you, but we won't be giving any legal advice, any financial advice. I'm very big on staying in my lane. I know what I'm good at, I know what I'm not good at, and what I'm not trained or qualified in. So my focus is very much helping people to cope better with the emotional roller coaster and the practical challenges, and then working as a team with their family lawyer if they're going direct access, or if they're just with all their people on their team, right? But we stay in our lane. So yes, it's cohabitants, it's people that have never been married as well, because the tools for emotional regulation and understanding abuse are the same, whether you're working with a narcissist, which is why I go into corporates and give talks there, but it can also be obviously intimate partners as well. So yeah, it covers covers a lot of things, as you can see. Um, oh, thank you, Maria. Thank you for sharing your story and expertise. Truly valued. Um, I'm going to let Family Law Week send out the recording. I'm sorry, I can't give the slides, and there's a reason for that. What I've given you today is very top level for domestic abuse. It is not enough for you to be trauma informed or to think, I've done my training, I'm going off. I've put everything I know into 4 hours in here. That's a lot in here, and obviously there's an appendix in here with lots of stuff in there as well, lots of really valuable information that will support the videos as well. Because I know you guys are busy. You don't have hours and hours to do a 1 day training with me, although I do that. But a lot of firms just don't have the time. So I've made it into 4 hours. That will get you your trauma informed lens. It will give you a depth. Obviously, you're not training to be a domestic abuse coach. My coaches go through intense training, 4 months with me to get to the point where they could be one-to-one coaching your clients. And obviously, we provide that. But the reason I don't give the slides out is because it's just not enough. And when we're dealing with vulnerable people, I take that really seriously. So safeguarding is important. So it's not enough. So I don't give the slides out, but you can see the recording. Feel free to share it with as many people as you like. I'm going to put the link. I don't know if I've got the link actually. I've got the link somewhere. If you'd like the link, let me see if I can find it. I'm going to pop it in the chat. So if you didn't get it on the, let's see, I don't know if Alex can grab it for me. I did. Oh, here it is. Hang on. Let me put it in the chat. It's the link to doing the training if you want to do it. I've just put it in the chat. So you can click on that link and go through. There's an information page, tells you more about it, a video, but you kind of heard me talk about it a bit. So yes, so just click on the link, you can join there, but do get in touch as well. We'll do webinars, you can come on my podcast. There's loads of stuff we could do together to raise awareness and help support clients through this. Thank you for all your lovely comments. Do you have any experience with lawyers who are targeted by the perpetrator? But yes. Oh, I'm sorry. We do coach and support as well. So whilst we coach, people who are victims of abuse, you are also in this situation. So what we do, the information that my coaches would do, we do support lawyers through that. So if your firm wants to collaborate or get some coaching, my coaches, and I would select the right coach for you because I have lots of different coaches at different levels. But if lawyers are being targeted by perpetrators, to be honest, I'm seeing this a lot, actually. I've had 5 or 6 phone calls this year alone from lawyers saying I'm being targeted. Now, obviously, we don't get into the legal side at all, but I can help you emotionally. We can tell you, we can explain in more depth and give you the support. That's what we do. So it'll be whether it's family lawyers or HR directors. This we do support in those situations. I'm really sorry because it's very scary, and yeah, but that's why we're here, and that's why I created this. So yeah, you're doing great work supporting a client who's dealing with it, and now you're being targeted. It's very scary, and yeah, I'm sorry, but yeah, we can definitely help. Oh, thank you, Helen. My passion, she says, your passion for this important area really shines through. Not a legal profession, litigant in person in the family court. I think it's great you're passing this on for information onto the legal profession. I really hope more judges complete. Look, guys, if you have any ideas how I can get this out to more people, please contact me if you're part of an association or a community or you're part of a training company or anything where I can get this training out there. Please let me know if you've got contacts in with judges or barristers or mediators or paralegals or other family lawyers. Yeah, I mean, I'm so grateful to Family Law Week for supporting and being part of this. So they've been amazing. They are phenomenal. Ashifa, who runs the organisation, heads it up, and Alex, who's on with me, have just been an absolute delight to work with, and Manny as well. So thank you to them for making this possible for me to be able to talk to you. It's been a real honour. I know I'm out of time, and I know a lot of you are super busy, so I will let you go. But yes, if anyone could reach out, then I would be and contact me on my email. By the way, it's just Sara at saradavison.com. So that's my personal email actually. So yeah, not for your clients, but for you, I'll just drop it in the chat. You can just email me if you do have any contacts because I'm on a mission, as you can tell, very passionate. And together we can make a real difference. Together we can help support a lot of people, and together we can save lives. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Alex, for hosting tonight as well.